So as I start digging into this deeper, they actually have a full suite of tools that they are publishing that are open source, and we can try to run those tools and see if they work. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Hi everyone, welcome to MacMind.io. My name is Johnny Mac. I am a software professional and the host of this channel. Thank you for tuning in to check out this video. I'm really excited to share the first in a series of videos I'm going to do on a subject I'm really excited about, and that's how to implement a trading algorithm and use decentralized protocols to buy and sell real assets. If you've watched some of my videos, you might be asking, what does this have to do with the Raspberry Pi or RPI image gen? The common theme is what I call barrier to entry. A microcontroller or single board computer is a fundamental component of products and services that creators like myself want to experiment with and possibly even create businesses out of. Raspberry Pi built a platform that allows someone like you or me to build something that would otherwise require access to a university or corporate research institution. And that's complicated. In a very similar fashion, blockchain and decentralized protocols offer the same sort of opportunities. They lower the barrier to entry for builders to create products and services. So that's the connection. And I think you'll really be interested to see how these two worlds come together on this project. I'm going to do a whole series of videos on this journey over the coming weeks, possibly months. So this is just the first in the series. I'm going to bring you along on this so you can see up close and near real time what I'm doing and how this goes. Now, a huge disclaimer, I'm not a registered financial advisor. There's no financial advice coming in this series. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. I'm not going to ask you for money at any point, make you any promises about returns. Please be careful and consult a professional before you take risks with your capital savings. There's always a chance that your investment can be lost, and there are variables and unforeseen events that even the best algorithms cannot handle perfectly. Like my friend George Gammon says, there are no certainties, only probabilities. This is an objective truth. One final thought before we get started. Please let me know what you think in the comments section, or find me on X or on my new Discord server. I'll be checking those on a regular basis. Okay. So where I want to start today is recognizing how trading algorithms are affecting our markets. And if you don't know how to use them, then you're going to struggle to compete for the best prices, both buying and selling. But don't take my word for it. Why don't we ask Grok what it thinks about this? And I did that here. So how do trading algorithms affect markets today? Trading algorithms have a massive impact on markets today, driving everything from liquidity to volatility. Basically, computer programs designed to execute trades at lightning speed based on predefined rules, right? Price thresholds, volume patterns, technical indicators. Okay, we have lots of computer algorithms running in various markets across all sectors of our economy. Okay, it's not just stocks and maybe bonds or crypto. You have algorithms that are running to compete to buy commodities, to buy collectibles. So I have some experience with the trading card industry and market using eBay to buy and sell trading cards, and massive deployments of computer algorithms to buy up trading cards in auctions to get the best price. And if you're just someone at home clicking refresh, trying to bid, you maybe have experienced that, right? It's frustrating. You are wondering, how did somebody come in the last microsecond and get a price higher than me? So it's not somebody, it's a computer algorithm that's running to bid at that exact precise moment. And that's why this is important. And it's something that if you have some savviness as a technician, and maybe you have some experience as a programmer, and maybe you have some appreciation for markets and you like to invest, this is something that you can learn how to do now. Again, if we think about barrier to entry, now is a time where you can learn how to do this. Whereas in the past, it would have been very difficult to test out an algorithm that you're wanting to experiment with, because the cost to buy and sell on centralized marketplaces is expensive, right? Central exchanges are going to charge pretty large fees, not just to make trades, but also just access to data. If you want to back test, for example, one of your algorithms, that would be very expensive on centralized services. Whereas nowadays with decentralized protocols, we can access lots of historical data, run back tests on our algorithm to see how it would have performed. That's what a back test is. And then actually deploy. And because the fees for these trades are so low, it's economically viable for us to deploy a small amount of capital and see results. So that's what is so interesting. So what's next? I'm learning about this and I'm wanting to learn more. So I go to YouTube and I start looking for trading algorithm videos. And it's interesting. There's lots of videos here that as you might expect, but the almost number one video here is 4 years old. Trading Algorithms Explain the Ultimate Guide. This is a great video, but it's a little bit dated, right? And we see that this website is no longer functioning. Okay, so you take that with a grain of salt. Like, I'm looking for something a little more modern, and some of these are just trying to sell you into a service where they're going to take your capital and they're going to deploy that capital on their trading platform, but they're not really teaching you how to do this. This gentleman here, Daniel Inskeep, great video. He actually signed up for one of those services and reported back, and he didn't really make that much money. So that was an interesting video to watch. But to be honest, I can't even recall exactly what keywords I used to discover tradingstrategy.ai, but this was really what I was looking for. And that was this video here, Convert Your Trading View Strategy to DeFi Using Python, tradingstrategy.ai. And this video was excellent. It's a small group, and I encourage you to check this out. And here is their website, tradingstrategy.ai. And this is really a great resource that is remarkable, to be honest, that these guys have put this together. They've done a lot of work to put this together. And so they do have some open strategies that you can put money into and start investing with their strategies. And they're going to take a commission based on how much those strategies succeed. But they also really, what was interesting to me is the 4 developers, right? And this is where we got into this documentation. And then it was revealed here that if we look through getting started, right, we have trading strategy as a solution for algorithmic trading on decentralized markets. Access DeFi market data, decentralized exchanges like lending protocols, free APIs and batch download files, backtest. Okay, so here, develop strategies using Python. So this was really interesting. Okay, this is now, I think, what I'm looking for. Okay, so as I start digging into this deeper, they actually have a full suite of tools that they are publishing that are open source, and we can try to run those tools and see if they work. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Before we get to that, this whole section here about learn algorithmic trading is fantastic. The content here is really great, and they have an entire glossary for terms. And as you start learning about algo trading, there's lots of terms, right? So for example, if we click here on decentralized exchanges, that's going to drop us here into this glossary. And you can just start going down this rabbit hole of terms and learning about these terms. And one term that comes up frequently in DeFi protocols is A, okay? And that you see here, A, right? So decentralized exchanges can be based on different models. Now, what is a decentralized exchange? A decentralized exchange is a blockchain-based financial service, okay? That's going to allow you to buy and sell digital assets that are represented on the blockchain. So either NFTs or tokens, really, that's what we're talking about primarily right now. And so you can then execute trades against those assets. And an A is a algorithm that's deployed to a decentralized financial exchange, okay, that's going to provide you as a buyer and or a seller a market to buy and sell that doesn't require another person on the other side, okay? So in a traditional financial market, centralized market, you have an order book where you say, I want to buy something, and someone else says they want to sell that same thing, and then you are matched up, okay? With an automated market maker, which is what an A is, you don't need to have another buyer. And the way that this is facilitated is something called a liquidity pool, okay? Automated market maker is a bonding curve based decentralized exchange, okay? It's a type of decentralized exchange protocol that uses algorithmic smart contracts to make it easy for individual traders to buy and sell crypto assets instead of trading directly with other people, okay? Users trade directly through the AMMs facilitate the decentralized exchange of digital assets using liquidity pools rather than conventional market order books. Okay, so what is a liquidity pool? Now, there's lots of videos online, and I don't want to be here giving you a whole lecture on liquidity pools, but I do think it would be a fun exercise to go ahead and just give you a basic overview of what a liquidity pool is. Okay, so let's hop over to Excalidraw, and this is a cool whiteboard site that I have discovered. I tried Lucid Spark for this exercise and it wasn't quite right. So let's try Excalidraw and see how this goes. Okay, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about an A liquidity pool. Okay, great. And the way I like to think about this is it's essentially a lever, okay? And so what's a lever, right? A lever is something like this. And then we have a balance point, which is the fulcrum, okay? And then the way this works is we're gonna have a pair, okay, of assets. And think about it, that makes sense. On one side, let's say we have, we'll call them MMT tokens, okay? That's MacMine tokens. And if you watched one of my videos earlier, we deployed a MacMine token to the Avalanche Snow Trace testnet. Okay, great. So now on the other side here, we have, let's say USDC, okay, tokens, okay? And we can get somewhat creative here and even add some images to this so that it looks cool. Okay, cool. We have our USDC tokens on this side, and then we're gonna get our MacMine tokens. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So now you see that these need to be balanced, right? And that's how a liquidity pool works. And this is called a token pair. So this would be an MMT USDC pair, okay? And just like on a regular whiteboard, I need to get my alignment figured out. Okay, so great. So now we have this lever and the way the liquidity pool works. Okay, so let's see how this might play out in practice. When you launch a asset on a decentralized protocol and you create a liquidity pool, you specify the value of the asset, right? And this is just like selling anything. You determine as the seller what you want to sell it for, okay? And there is some subjectivity to this, but the virtue ultimately is that the market's going to determine what it's really worth. So just like you might put something on eBay or Craigslist and you might say, hey, this is worth 20 bucks. And then someone comes and says, okay, great, I'll give you 15. Then you know that it's actually worth 15, or vice versa. Maybe they say, oh, I'll give you 30. And now you know it's worth 30. Okay, so that's essentially what's going to happen is when you create the liquidity pool, you are going to specify some ratio that you think that it's worth to start. Okay, and this is called like that initial ratio, okay? And so when we see this play out here, let's say we have 500 MT tokens, and that's going to be 100 USDC tokens. Okay, great. So what are we saying here? We're saying that one MMT token is 20 cents, right? 20 USDC tokens, and one USDC token is going to be 5 MMT tokens. Okay, great. So this is our initial liquidity pool, okay? And so if you come to the market, you would see that, oh, okay, I want to buy some MMT. I heard it's great, and I'm going to make that investment. It looks like they are 20 cents each. Okay, so what's going to happen? Right now, the way that an A works is something called a constant product, okay? And the way that this works is we just say that the count of token A times the count of token B equals K, okay? And the rule is that K shall remain constant. Okay, this is how it works. So how do we ensure that K remains constant? Remember, it has to be balanced, right? And that's essentially what we're gonna do here. Every time you remove MMT tokens, okay, you have to add USDC tokens in order for that balance to remain, okay? And so this formula is gonna be deployed to ensure that happens. Okay, so what happens then? Let's say we wanna remove 100 MMT tokens from the pool. Now we use the term pool here. I like lever, but liquidity pool, that's what it's called. Essentially what we're doing is we're gonna pull 100 tokens off this side of the lever. And so we need to add USDC tokens to the other side, like I just said, okay? And so how do we do that? We're gonna use this formula that we just said that we had in order to ensure that's gonna happen, okay? And that's gonna look something like this. The constant product in this example is going to be now a number. Let's see if we can get back here, okay? So we have 500 times 100, and that's gonna equal 50,000, okay? So K equals, therefore K equals 50,000. And I love this little therefore symbol. K equals 50,000. Okay, great. So now let's see what happens if we remove that 100 tokens, okay, from the left side. So now we have 500 minus 100 equals 400, right? MMT tokens. All right, we need to make sure that this equation is kept constant, right? That K is kept constant, right? And so if we have 400 now times some number of USDC equals 50,000, right? Then this is just some simple math, right? 50,000 divided by 400 equals number of USDC, and that number is going to be 125, right? So we know now that 125 tokens, okay, need to be number USDC equals 125. Right, so we know that we need 125 USDC tokens on this side of the lever if we're only going to have 400 on that side in order for K to remain 50,000, okay? And so therefore, if I'm going to remove those 100, I need to add 25. So I need to add 25 USDC tokens to remove 100. Okay, so what does that mean? Wow, 25 USDC tokens. That's interesting. I thought it was 20 cents. That would be $20 for 100. What happened? Actually, because of the way this model works, it's not 20 cents. It's 25 to pull 100 out. And it's dynamic based on how much you want to pull out, okay? And this is called the price impact, okay? So we have this term here. So now what is our liquidity pool telling us? Oops. What it's telling us is now, okay, great. So I execute that transaction. I have, wow, 25, all right, but okay, that's okay. So now I have 400 MMT, right? And I have 125 USDC, and therefore, right, I have 1 MMT is going to be worth, sorry, 1 USDC is going to be 3.2 MMT now, okay? And then if we do 125 on 400, we see 0.3125. So we have 1 MMT is 0.3125 USDC. Okay, great. So this has now changed the value, okay? And that's what you might expect, right? If we pull the MMT out, we are essentially signaling that this has value. and there's now less of it. So it went up in value. So for the next buyer, they're going to have a higher price. Okay, so that's the gist of the A. And what's interesting again is that it is dynamic based on the size of the liquidity pool and how much is being added or removed. Okay, and so I did a simple little Google sheet here. And if we come back, we can see, let's go back to 500 and 100. So we see here, this is my initial MMT, this is my initial USDC, okay? And these are those initial prices, okay? And then we have a transaction history here, a theoretical transaction history here, okay? And so if we do that first buy of 100 MMT, we see that the price is 25. And now the new price is 3.2 and 0.3125. Okay, great. Now we do another buy, right, of 50 MMT. The price would be 17,857, right, total. So again, that would be 0.357, right, now USDC. Okay, so the price went up, right, because there's less in the pool. And now we have 350 reserve, and then that resets the price, right, okay? But look what happens as we increase the reserve. We're not going to change the ratio, right? We're just increasing the quantity of tokens, okay? And you see now that, yes, the price is still changing, but not nearly as dramatically, okay? And if we go up even higher, let's say to 50,000, the price is going to change even less dramatically, okay? And so this is a key component of decentralized AI services, right? Is that how big is the liquidity pool? And that's going to limit that price impact. And that's a good thing. You don't want too much price impact because as a buyer, you don't want to be facing that, right? When you buy something, suddenly it's much more than what you thought or what was previously published because you're disrupting the liquidity pool so much, right? You just want the price that you said it was, right? Or you thought it was. And so that's a really interesting phenomenon here. Okay, so I wanted to share that because I'm learning myself, and a lot of times it's helpful to explain things, draw them out, write them out, visualize them, so you really get a firm grasp of what's happening, because it's important to understand these topics as you go into something like this, and that's how I learn and I become confident. So next thing we're going to do is hop back to our trading strategy docs, and remember when we were here, what we're looking for is in the developer documentation. Okay, we're here getting started, and what we see is that there is a getting started coding tutorial. Great. Okay, this tutorial is old. Please see getting started GitHub repo. Okay, excellent. And so this is the getting started repo. And when we scroll down through this, we find that, okay, we can do this locally using Visual Studio Code dev containers. This is the approach that I'm taking here. So that's what I'm going to show you how to set up. I am a Docker advocate. I like keeping things abstracted from my main host machine. And so let's see if we can get this working. So when we come back in here, we see some instructions. And when we scroll down, check out the repository from GitHub. So one thing right off the bat, right? I wish this was in a different order. It says currently a recursive git clone is needed. So we're gonna, instead of just git clone the repo and then do this git submodule update, which you could do, you can also just clone with the recursive submodules from the start. So the way to do that, if we hop over here to our terminal, okay, great, and that's done. That's a lot of code, and that makes me a little nervous because I don't know, what I just cloned, right? And you want to be careful that you're not getting involved with something that might not be doing what you think it's doing, okay? And so that's going to be part of this journey. But we do see some references along the way, Open Zeppelin contracts, for example, and some other familiar names, Web3, Ethereum, DeFi, okay? And so that's giving me a little bit of confidence that this is in fact legitimate. So that's good. So let's go ahead and open up VS Code next. And then we can hop over there. Okay, and what we see here is the project, all right? And what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna make a few modifications. I had to make these modifications. Now, if you're able, you might just try and get this going as is. You're gonna come down here and you're gonna reopen in the container. However, I did not get this running as is. So I did have to make a few changes, and those changes were not super major. I'll go ahead and show you those changes. In the Docker file, in this dev container, so that's what we're essentially going to be leveraging here is the VS Code dev container feature that's going to launch this entire environment in a Docker container for us that's configured here with this Docker file and this dev container JSON. This is somewhat novel to me. Most of my experience with Docker is just building images and running them with Docker Compose. So I will be learning about this feature and I'll have an opinion on whether I like it or not. But for now, essentially what I've done is made a few changes here. If we look at those changes, I'm going to modify this to be a bookworm versus bullseye. And then I added a few packages here that were missing, that were necessary in order for this to work, okay? And so those are those changes. And then lastly, in the dev container JSON, I went ahead and modified this to be bookworm. Okay, great. So let's see now if this will reopen in the container. And so we see there is an examples directory here, but there's nothing in it. And so what we need to do is run this script here to set up examples. And so we can go ahead and do that. Let's just run these one at a time. So first we're just gonna traverse the notebooks that are here and put them in our examples. But then we're also gonna go ahead and clone this docs repository. And then we're going to take those examples. And then there's also more examples in the getting started guide. And so I'm going to go ahead and clone that also. So if I do that here to getting started. Okay, and this is going to be here. Okay, cool. Okay, great. And now you can see we have all these examples, right? Including one that I will try. And it is called Bitcoin Moving Average. Okay. And so this one is provided in one of these examples, right? Bitcoin moving average strategy example. This is one of the simplest trading strategies. We buy if Bitcoin price is above its simple moving average, otherwise we sell, okay? And so what we'll do next is we will see if we can back test this. That's one of the great things about this framework here. And we can get into some of the docs of how this works, but let's go ahead and see if we can get this running as a back test, okay? And so the way we're gonna do this is we're just gonna come here and say we want to run all. All right, and as we scroll down here, we can see that this is executing. Okay, great. And that's finished. Okay, excellent. And now it looks like something happened. Okay, what happened? Name client is not defined. Interesting, okay. Why would that be? That seems to indicate that something up here did not run. Let's go ahead and restart. Yes, and then run all again and see what happens then. Okay, so that should initialize the client. So do you have an API key yet? So that's something that we're going to want to understand. So let's go ahead and see when we come back here, we are going to want to get an API key. So somewhere in here, forgive me getting started, getting an API key. How about that? There we go. To get a trading strategy API key, please visit here. All right, great. And then you go ahead and you enter your email, first name, last name, and that's going to give you the API key. Okay, excellent. So I have an API key, and if I locate that, okay, so I enter my API key, and now I should be able to go ahead and let's just restart and try to run all. And sure enough, now we see, okay, great. And now we're here. Okay, excellent. And now, okay, there is an issue. Looks like Create Trading Universe is failing. And it looks like, okay, assertion error, Binance URL replied, service unavailable from a restricted location according to eligibility. So let's see if we can't work around that and get this backtest running. Okay, so I asked Grok about some options here for free VPNs. I don't have a VPN, I don't pay for a VPN. That's probably not a bad idea. So what's happening here is what the code wants to do is it wants to source some data from Binance so that it can run a backtest and see how the algorithm performs against historical data. And Binance is offshore from the United States. I'm here in the United States, and it is blocking me from accessing due to its restrictions. But looking into this a little bit, I think it's a fuzzy area. I don't think it's objectionable to use a VPN here. I'm not going to be breaking anything serious, so I'm just going to use it to get that data. And the best VPN that I could find here that's free was called TunnelBear. And so let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So if we come back over here, when I go to tunnelbear.com, more secure way to browse the web. Okay, great. So I did look into this and it has a little client. So I installed that client here. And what I can do is just run that VPN, and then I'm going to select a geo that is within the tolerance for Binance APIs and see if that works. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, it's connecting, and I am now, okay, securely connected. Okay, great. So let's come back here and see what happens if we try to run this backtest now. Come back to the top here, and let's go ahead and restart. Excellent. I'm not sure if I need to do that or not. I'm just going to do it for the sake of things. And here we go. Now we got that, and we can see this. And sure enough, okay, excellent. We're now downloading candlestick data for BTC USDT. Okay, it looks like that's actually done. All right, fantastic. And okay, cool. Here's the algorithm. Here's the back test. Okay, fantastic. And we see that this is working, right? And we'll spend some time looking in further what is actually happening here. But for me, when I've talked about this a little bit, I'm not gonna venture too deep into a project until I can get the basics going, right? And make sure that it works and it runs, and that it is fundamentally going to provide me with an opportunity, right, to do more. So now we can dig into what's happening here a little bit, but I feel pretty good that we were able to get that up and running and get that backtest going. And now we'll take a little bit of a look at the code, and then we'll wrap it up for this video. So if we dig into how this works here, if we head back over, one thing that I noticed was that there's some parameters here, right? And we have this start and end dates. And so this was set to July of 24. And I wanted to see if we set that to something more recent, right? So setting that to a recent date, and we know there's been a lot of volatility in the markets and what that looks like. So when I look here at this chart that it generates, we do see now quite a bit here for 2025. So that suggests that it's pulling this data. But what's a little odd to me is that we see BTC here, and I would think that's this price of Bitcoin. And it's not quite, I know it was over 100,000 for a few weeks there, and I don't see that. So that's a little confusing. And then also this Bitcoin moving average, it's a little confusing there too. So I'm going to need to learn, that's part of this journey, but so far that doesn't make sense to me. And then the other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is just what I was saying when we were doing this and we had that download error. This is where that's happening here in this downloader. We see this base Binance API URL. Now I want to move over to the last thing here, which is going to be just back to this documentation. And I wanted to share that just the main gist of what is happening here and how this works. So if we look through, there's lots of documents here and lots of information. One thing that was super helpful for me came out of this learning algorithmic trading and then developing portfolio construction trading strategies. And one thing, if we scroll through here, you just start to read this and consume this, and this is great. You're going to see all these glossary references, right? And this is excellent way for you to learn how does portfolio construction work. But really, what is the trading strategy framework and how does it support creating portfolio construction strategies? And this is interesting because, you know, what I discovered is the strategy core logic section here. And this is great because it says the trading strategy framework offers two functions the developer must implement. Okay, so that's your interface. Okay, and you have create trading universe. It returns an object that represents all assets the strategy can trade. Great. So you can really focus in on a few assets that you want to include in your trading universe. And then you have this decide trades, which takes in the current strategy cycle, timestamp trading universe, and the current strategy state as input. Based on this data, the function will return a list of new trades that will either open new or close existing positions. So that's where you're actually going to do stuff. And so that's the gist of it, really. And I like that it's so simple. Obviously, it's going to become more complex as we look deeper into how do we create a trading universe? How do we decide trades? Where does that logic go? But it's a really simple framework from the top level if we're looking at it from there. And so if we come back over to our code, we can see that it does in fact implement these methods, right? We have create trading universe right here, okay? And then later we have decide trades. And so that right away we can map what we see in the docs to the actual code. That's giving me more confidence. And there are some other things happening here, right? Indicators. We use pandas TA Python package to calculate technical indicators. So we're going to want to understand what those are, what that does. And then obviously we have our back test. But so far, it doesn't look too overwhelming. And again, this framework seems to be very robust and documented. And again, like I said, there's a Discord channel. The maintainers are very welcoming and they've been making themselves available to answer questions. And that's obviously great to see. So that's it for this video. Thanks for tuning in today for the start of this series on trading algorithms. We got up and running with the trading strategy AI tools using dev containers and VS Code on our local machine. We were able to break down and learn about an automated market maker liquidity pool. And we're really looking forward to this series. We're going to take it to the next step where we're going to learn more about trading strategy AI. We're going to learn more about how we pull data, analyze that data to make decisions, and then ultimately we're going to go ahead and deploy an algorithm to a live mainnet to see if we can't actually execute some trades and see some of these strategies in action. I hope you're having a great day, and remember, don't stop experimenting, challenging assumptions, and seeking the objective truth. I'm Johnny Mac. This is MacMind.io.